Hello and welcome. What the fuck? We'll just restart that. Blip, 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 blip. Here we go. Hello and welcome to Three's a Crime, a true crime podcast. I'm Tori.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Lindsey.
And that's our intro.
Here we are professional podcasters.
We're podcasters, bitches.
I have to tell you guys, this website is amazing because it's literally dyatlovpass.com and it has every single theory. So I'm gonna I kind of want to go through the theories that you guys have just to see what this says. They range from avalanche, freak winds, aliens, yetis, secret Soviet missile or weapon systems, paranormal activity, KGB connections. Russia's first post-communist president and a former student at the same college was one who many believed was part of an elaborate cover-up staged to hide what happened, which is kind of what I think happened. I think, or they came across something that they were not supposed to come across. 1959 Soviet Russia is not known for being the most transparent. And the weird injuries give me dead man tell no tales stories.
That's
or something.
What I keep thinking of, somebody just going.
I don't know. Yeah,
maybe they stepped on some kind of radioactive landmine.
Yeah, and what the fuck is the deal with radio? Only 2 pieces of clothing being radioactive. It's weird.
They may have been the ones that actually stepped on.
But then
because only 3 of them were so traumatically killed.
But we don't know exactly what time some of these people died.
Right.
So okay, hypothetically, you've got the 3 that are hit the hardest because those are the ones that had the radioactive stuff on them, right?
2 people had it. One of them was one of the women, but it wasn't her piece of clothing. It was one of the other men. Oh. So she was wearing someone else's radioactive clothing. So they might have all belonged to one person.
Right.
I can double check that though.
So maybe that's where maybe something happened where then they're all injured. But then they kind of go off. Some make it farther than others. And then, she crawls into the thingy and dies.
I wonder, the 38-year-old dude. Is that Zoltar? Dr.
Zoltar.
I wonder if he went along to keep an eye on them.
He had some kind of, connection to, the KGB. He had some weird...
Especially with the
military connection. Yeah.
Showed up.
And guess what? Those photos have never been released by the Russian government.
Oh. The ones that were found with his body.
The one that were on the camera that nobody knows where it came from. That's why I think that. Yeah, so you on this website, this is just dyatlovpass.com. You can see all the film from Dorichenko, everyone's camera. There are some photos from the unknown camera, but not all of them. They're just
and if they were just random, hey, we're hiking today, why would they not release them? There has to be something on those pictures that they don't want people to see.
What would have made him grab his camera and not everything else?
Yeah.
Why would you grab your camera?
Alien.
If you guys look at the photos, these are the only photos that are on that camera that we're able to be. They are creepy orbs in the sky.
Yeah, you gotta get this shit up like that.
Yeah.
So close.
So one of the theories from someone who went to school with these people was he claims Zolotaryov grabbed his camera to take a picture of some lights in the sky. According to the student, his name was Yakimenko, 2 of the negatives seem to depict a section of rocket or plane which may have broken off after a failed military experiment or possibly a 2-stage rocket launch.
That one looks like Batman. Like the Batman symbol.
From a distance, this looks like a silhouette of a person.
Which one?
The mushroom with face.
Ooh.
We'll post as much as we can on the Instagram, but I'll put the link
Yeah.
to the Dyatlov
That would be great.
website. So you think it's a cover-up as well?
I think it's some type of people. I think some type of people did this. I don't know what kind of people, but I don't think it was animals. It might have been aliens. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I think it's really quite clear that when you're looking at the injuries, yes, the ultimate cause of death may have been hypothermia or exposure to the cold, but clearly that wasn't the only, I mean,
Not
these
the only
people,
factor.
Like, you don't have both sides of your ribs crushed.
Yeah. And your tongue ripped out while you're alive.
I just think that
Sketch
It's fucked
City,
up.
am I right?
Yeah, I mean,
Definitely something's being covered up. Absolutely.
regardless of whether it was aliens, people, KGB, or whatever, I can't imagine that this would do anything for Russia's tourism industry.
And
Like,
they
you
were
could go-
supposedly experienced.
Extremely experienced.
So,
Right.
like,
So
They would have been prepared for an avalanche. And there was 9 of them. It's not like there's power in numbers, it's not like it was 2 people just like walking around some sketchy ass mountain.
So we take it from the very beginning that, okay, something caused them to feel like they had to get out of the tent and away from the tent in a hurry, and yet they were still able to be calm enough to walk single file to get out
that's exactly
of there.
what it makes me think, like somebody was like leading them with force
So
Right.
of a weapon, or
Like, get out of the tent.
to cause them
Come
to
on,
also
let's go.
leave immediately and not put any shoes on.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, but then let's talk about the 2 people that were outside. They were already dressed. So did they were
upon
they
it.
part of it? Who are the 2
Mm.
that were
Let me
outside?
look.
Do we know if like cutting out eyes and tongues are some kind of like KGB?
So
like,
one of the things I
things?
read was it could have been if you wanted to use that argument that it was a military thing of cut out your tongue, you can't say anything. Cut out your eyes, you didn't see anything. Like
'Cause
it's
just-
possible they saw something. Those 3. The other ones might have just died of hypothermia. Like it might have just been.
But they had so many injuries to their bodies
I know,
as well
it's weird. It's
that
really
seemed
weird.
to be more extensive than what you would normally.
You can see the pictures of the tent, and it also has like diagrams of like where they think people were and where
Oh,
their
they went
things
out
were.
the whole
Oh,
slit.
it's
They-
it's
This
a
isn't-
badass website.
Yeah, this isn't like they cut a slit in the tent.
Yeah,
and
I
got
They
was
out.
were
imagining-
stabbing.
They like
out of
ripped the entire
Yeah,
side
like,
of the tent
strip-
out and went out the side. And again, it's so cold and snowy. What would have made them leave the tent so fast? Man, they left a lot of stuff there.
and experienced hikers.
Yeah.
You would not even leave barefoot to go pee outside.
no.
Like you would never. There is no point in this excursion that you would take your socks off. You would, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
especially
you wouldn't
yeah, your
sleep
socks and your feet.
naked or whatever, you'd freaking be more bundled up. It doesn't make any sense. In the tent, 2 buckets, a flask with alcohol, 2 large axes, 1 small axe, cooking pots, suspended stove, a bag of biscuits, that disgusting piece of fat. In the center was where they stored food.
God, how is this fun? How is this a good vacation?
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Yeah, where you're just like, hey, I'm gonna go out into the frozen tundra.
And climb a death mountain.
So it was Nikolai and Zolotaryov who were outside.
See, that makes me wonder if
Why
maybe
they were both fucking
they were
dressed
up and
Yeah.
dressed,
ready
and
to go.
Did they go in and say, "All right, everybody up, get out"?
I think they probably went out to pee or something, and maybe or like went out to.
She was really
because
into
I
what's
just
happening.
came upon a picture that I see just a hand sticking out of,
That was Igor.
and then you can see a little bit of his plaid shirt, and then I just realized that down over here is a foot,
Oh.
a bare foot.
Really? Which picture are you looking at?
Oh, there's his head.
Ooh.
I just want to go back because I want to mention that if people look at these pictures, if they choose to look at them,
Fair warning. Trigger warning.
Yeah, serious trigger warning. But what is so surprising is I just listened to you describe like what they were wearing, and I'm still looking, and I'm like, holy shit! Like his whole one leg is out, and just bare.
It's weird when you see it.
It is so weird when you see it because he looks like he's wearing shorts and laying in sand, not snow. Looks like he might have something on that foot, but that foot is bare. I mean, I see toes, and that's like a bare leg.
So I mean, definitely, if you have time, everyone should go look at these because
Yeah.
it's pretty. There is a lot of information.
But they are graphic.
Some people claim that a UFO scared the group away. I'm reading this directly from the website. About this same time, Soviet armed forces did launch several rockets from Baikonur Base. Although military claimed the rockets landed in the North Ural Mountains, several geologists 70 kilometers from the mountains saw some glowing and pulsating orbs flying in the direction of Kolatsyakal, which I believe is near where they were, on February 1st, which is the last day that these people were seen alive. And the date that lines up. Other people who had no idea this had happened were also seeing these weird lights in the sky.
Okay.
They just know that there were lights. Other people also saw them, and it happened to also be at the same time that they were doing some weird military rocket shit. A veteran of the KGB and the Federal Security Service of Russia named Vladimir Negev?
Vlad to his friends.
Vlad. To his friends. We call him Vlad.
Dracula.
He was the head of the faculty of the Military Medical Institute and candidate of medical sciences. He published a trilogy in 2018 that reveals the mechanism of death of the Dyatlov. He thinks he knows why they died. He says that he believes the Dyatlov group died while participating in a scientific experiment of national importance. So they were launching special purpose radio probes in an unpopulated area. Under the chloroprene shell of the balloon was a gas with short-lived radioactive isotopes. Meteorological rockets are known to have been used in the region of Mount Ortorton, which is where they were. At some point, a missile must have hit one or more radio zones and spilled the radioactive content.
They were just wrong place, wrong time.
The next one is Special Forces. So there was a British author, Keith McCloskey, suggests that the students stumbled upon a military testing area and were either killed by Soviet soldiers protecting the area or were scared into fleeing by the sounds of nearby explosions. So one possible scenario is that the power struggle and illegal use of military equipment, helicopters in particular, by high-ranking officers. This theory was put forward in September 2011. During the time of the incident, the 21st Communist Party Congress was taking place in Moscow. We live near Idaho, where we also have a Moscow. Moscow is in Russia. Moscow is in Idaho. There's another theory that is infrasound. Could be like weather phenomena. It could be
I've heard
like
about that.
Yeah, and it basically says it essentially makes a sound so
They have weapon. I mean, they have weapons like that.
yeah,
so-
testing weapons was not like uncommon in 1959
Totally.
in Soviet Russia. It's like possible that like they heard something and in a panic because the point of this is to make you fucking
Lose your mind.
Yeah. It's weird. It's just weird. The Russian government completely closed this case until 2019. They just opened it back up and said the only 3 possible conclusions are an avalanche, a windstorm, or some other natural disaster that still doesn't explain anything.
Right. I mean, because here's the thing. Like, the eyes, I can believe being pecked out. I can even believe that a critter got to a tongue.
One of the other weird things is they noticed that some of the pine trees in the forest were burned at the top, which is weird.
Yeah.
Just the top.
And that's trees. I mean, as
we live in Washington, the evergreen state. They're fucking tall. Okay.
Yeah, this is not,
Yeah. I don't know why I just thought of this. Nope, never mind. That doesn't add up either. See, nothing adds up. Every time I think I'm like, oh my God, I've solved this. Nope. Sure haven't. There was a claim that the A.P. Kirilenko, member of the Soviet Congress, along with his advisor, A.F. Ashtikin, they forced Ivanov, who is the one in charge of the investigation. They forced him to take out any reference to unknown flying objects or other strange phenomena out of this file. This included pictures of flying spheres drawn by the Mansi hunters and other testimonies. So all these other people, it was removed. It just says like it's weird. UFOs were not investigated by the official science as it was deemed a pseudoscientific or religious phenomenon. Atheist Soviet Union obviously prohibited any interest in the subject, especially among members of the highest legislative body in the country. Levanov. In 1990, he was a retired prosecutor and he published an article, The Enigma of the Fireballs. Great name.
Oh,
Okay. When he
my.
admitted that in the spring of 1959, under the pressure of A.P. Kirilenko and his deputy A.F. Yeshtokin, who I said he told him to take out all this information, these guys, he withdrew various key materials from the case that indicated the true cause of the incident. So basically, every piece of information that says that it could have been some weird phenomenon, some alien-esque type thing has been completely removed from the file.
Okay, but here's the thing. They're all covered by the time that they're found, right? So we know that it's been the 26th was the last night, right, that anybody was seen. It could have snowed to cover them up, but
You're thinking avalanche is what your question is.
I'm not necessarily
Oh.
thinking avalanche, but I'm like, did it snow? Could it have been an avalanche towards the end? Because the force of the snow hitting you, if it's a big avalanche, could, I think, probably break ribs and cause that kind of damage to their features if they were buried. So, do we know if there was snow and storms? We know the wind was calm, but in those 20-something days that it took to find them.
Mm-hmm.
How did her tongue get ripped out? Well, she's alive.
Radioactive clothing
Alright.
and eyeballs ripped out.
Well,
I'm
See?
not just
Okay,
It's crazy.
so
It's
what
just-
if?
okay,
all right,
yeah.
all right. So what if the Soviets are testing some sort of weapon, which explains the lights, that brings them out of the tent to look at what is going on, then something hits or whatever, and if they're testing missiles or something, a missile could have caused an avalanche.
Why'd they rip out of the tent if all they saw was lights? Why would you rip out of your tent for that? You would just leave the tent and you'd put shoes on.
Yeah, but think about when you panic and everybody's trying, you got 7 people in a tent trying to get out. Maybe somebody panicked and decided they were gonna.
I don't know. The picture with how big that tent is, it looks like all of them were like getting out.
Like
It's not like someone was like,
It's
everyone get
crazy.
out of this one hole. It's like everyone is like,
Right. Yeah.
and
panicking
again,
to get
why
out.
would they be, why would they have no socks on at all?
Why would
They should have been
be
sleeping in
with
socks. Like they
yeah.
should have been completely bundled up enough to have been able to step outside to see what these lights were.
Unless their clothes were somehow on fire and they lost clothing, like you said.
But there was nothing found. There was none of that was found. There was no like burned clothing. I mean, burned clothing they were wearing, but like it's not like,
Right.
I mean, I don't know. It's weird. You see? So let's do avalanche then. This is the one that pisses me off because I think it's bullshit. And this is the one that they claim now is what caused it. And now that you know all the details, I think you can see why I think it's bullshit. There has never what?
I said, yeah, Brendan, and then I said, just
Brendan.
kidding, because he's the one who said.
Well, I'm not even necessarily saying that. I just wanted to know how they got buried in the snow. Like, was it an avalanche or was there weather? Because, this is an area that's snowy and I'm sure having storms were they just covered with fresh snow.
Where they were was at the bottom of an incline, which you'd think is like, that's weird. You wouldn't. Why the fuck would you do that? This place they were, it's not tall. It's not steep. Remember when I said that avalanches have to be at like a 30-degree incline, and they were at like a 22 or something like that, which like I said, in the grand scheme of a giant fucking snowy mountain is like a big difference. There has never in the history of ever been an avalanche there. ever.
Well, and the snow that I'm looking that these people are standing on, where I'm assuming they were digging from, looks like relatively flat. And in an avalanche, I just can't imagine that the snow would spread so evenly.
Yeah. And the bushes are still poked out.
There is, however, a super creepy either double exposure or some kind of...
I'm going to let everybody know I'm
Yeah.
into the woo-woo.
The
I
woo-woo.
believe in the
I'm
ghosts.
into the woo as well, and
that looks like a motherfucking orb.
yeah, to the right of the cross.
And then, oof.
And then above it, there's a little mass.
Yeah, it doesn't
It's-
feel good.
It's hard to tell with these older photos like this because technology is a little bit different, but
basically a slab avalanche is what they think. This is the new information that like we solved the Dyatlov Pass thing. It does not require a 30-degree slope to trigger it. It only is a 20-degree slope. Their camp was at 23. And they found that at this incident, in one of the videos I watched, they actually dug into the snow. And you can see that all the snow on top is really hard and compacted like ice, and everything underneath is like fluffy, so it's really weak.
Yeah, and you think about the force, and see in this one, it looks like when the slab breaks off, and you see it hit force with the little blue snowman, and then you watch it push them back, which again I feel like would explain why they were found kind of grouped in different areas.
The reason that I don't think this, one, that could explain why they were ripping out of the tent. Like, if someone was like, oh my God, avalanche, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
if they were standing outside and they were like, oh my
moving.
God, avalanche.
Yeah.
I still think you, again, would have had clothes on anyway.
Well, I was just going to say, but think about the force that they're being hit with. And I don't know if you've ever, and I unfortunately have seen this twice, seen a pedestrian hit by a car. The force will hit them so hard, it can knock their shoes and all kinds of things off their bodies. And if they're being pulled by the snow and they're only in socks, I mean, I can see a sock being
Coming off.
Yeah, but that doesn't explain the burns.
It also doesn't explain the calm footprints.
Right.
And it also doesn't explain that none of the food was disturbed. So there were crackers.
Oh yeah, that's right. It looks
crackers
like it
in
was
a tent that had been hit by an avalanche would not remain cracker shaped.
And then the broken
Right.
branches.
The broken branches are weird. I don't know. Can you climb a tree to get away from an avalanche? I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe.
I mean,
if you're fast enough.
If you're fast enough. I think look how fast that's coming down. Like once it would start, you wouldn't be able to get out of the way of it.
No.
Now, depending if there was, if the avalanche was coming and there were trees in the way, that could break tree branches. And then they could have been hit with branches, like if there's debris and all of this stuff coming down at you. But again, it doesn't explain the burns.
The burnt tops of the trees.
And it doesn't explain
Because some of the burns
missing
on the
eyeballs.
clothing, again, can be explained away just because that was
The
shown in
wood-
pictures. That was like a weird.
And wood stove, they could.
I mean, one of them could have fucking left their
Embers.
jacket, was drying it, and it fucking was
Right, and
sitting
it caught
it
on
or
fire
something.
and they were,
So the way that this is explained is if you think of like a parking garage, when the year's first snow falls, it becomes in contact with the ground that's still relatively warm, but the air temperature has fallen dramatically, creating a temperature gradient that builds a porous crystalline material known as a weak layer that's 80% air. On top of this, more snow falls, forming a denser slab. So think of it like a parking garage, with the weak layer being the parking spaces and the sparse pillars, lots of air, and then the solid concrete ceiling above the slab. And so if you knock down one of those pillars, the whole thing is gonna.
Yeah.
So the other example is if you stack two books on your palm and you put them at an angle, the first one's gonna fall and then the second one's gonna fall. Same thing. It's just weird. Like, it's just weird. And it's weird to me that this came out at the same time that I was researching this, because Michael had texted me this article after work or at work, and he was like, look, they solved it right as you're doing this. And I'm like, I'm basically a professional with this Dyatlov Pass thing. Let me read it and I'll tell you if it's true. And I'm like, these are all lying.
It's them trying to make it not woo, like spooky woo.
I mean,
But why can't it be? Why can't
so
we just let things be weird?
and it gets even weirder.
Ugh.
Did you see the one of where it hits, like where the person is in
Yes. If they would have been sleeping, still does not. I think that's what that is. It still doesn't make sense why nothing was disturbed. Everything, the shoes were laid out fine, the clothes were fine, the supplies was fine. Nothing was ripped
Right.
up, freaking out, panic. The only thing fucked up was the tent. What would be so scary unless there was something scary inside the tent?
So you're in the tent, right?
Okay.
And somebody's like, holy shit, avalanche. And so everybody's rushing. You only have seconds to get out. They slice the tent. Everybody gets out. But the area that they go to is where the snow comes down and doesn't actually
Leaving
hit
the tent
leaving the
alone.
tent alone. So
Okay.
they would have been fine in the tent.
You can always say, like, well, if I was in this situation, I would have responded with blah, blah, blah. And I was going to say, if this was me and someone said avalanche and someone was ripping the side of the tent, I think I would try and like grab everyone's shoes because someone else is grabbing the tent and I'm just like waiting to get out, I feel like I would grab it. But then when my house burned down, I didn't even grab shoes for myself. So I'm going to go ahead and say I probably wouldn't do that.
Well, and again, I mean, the thing is that I really feel like if they saw an avalanche coming, and I know it sounds like I might be the one that's like the proponent for avalanche happening.
I mean, it might have been. It might have
But-
explained what got them out of the tent.
Tori is Team Avalanche.
But
It still doesn't explain what happened outside the tent.
No, and
but
that's the thing. That's why I'm not sold on the
that's why
avalanche
it
thing.
could be multiple, I don't know,
like a series of
a
unfortunate
series of very unfortunate
events. But I feel like by the time you would see an avalanche beginning, there
be
wouldn't
too
be
late.
time to get out of, like, I don't think that there would really be time to do anything.
I mean, it's possible.
So that's
It's
why I
possible.
just don't think that
You're right. It could have been really small and their tent could have been right at the side and they're like, oh, fuck, we need to like get out of here because obviously there's avalanches. But like where they were didn't directly affect them.
Or maybe something started, so they all rushed out. And then as they, maybe there was a small avalanche that caused them to get up and out of the area. And then they just struck some place as they were walking that was too weak and prompted the bigger slab of an avalanche.
So like they knew. Sorry.
But
go ahead.
again, that doesn't explain why they
Where
were
were they missing?
radioactive.
Yeah, a radioactive, eyes and tongue missing.
Yeah.
Because it has all the tropes of a fucking like ghost movie.
Alexei Rikleton, he wrote a book called Dyatlov Pass. It introduces the idea that Zolotaryov and Kolevatov and Krivonashenko were KGB agents on a mission to uncover a cell of CIA agents. They were to deliver radioactive samples and then take photographs of the Americans, but something went wrong. CIA agents killed the group. And then this just said, it sounds absurd now, but in a state of fear and paranoia,
During the
this
Cold
was the
War.
only way to spy on the Soviet Union. Alexander Zolotaryov, a 38-year-old bachelor and instructor at a different tour base, joined the group at the last minute. He was a veteran.
That's fishy.
I know.
Yeah.
He was a veteran with years of combatant experience who fought for the NKVD. Before transferring to the psychics technical department at the UPI, he worked in Moscow as a laboratory assistant in a top secret scientific facility, an unnamed atomic institute known as P.O. Box 3394. Yuri Krivonashenko worked in a most notorious P.O. Box 404/10, the plant Mayak in Shlebinsk 40, where a massive nuclear disaster, second in severity only to Chernobyl, occurred in 1957. Alexei, the guy who wrote this book, is certain that this particular fellowship was not gathered by a whim of chance. Behind the biographies of Zolotaryov, Kolevatov, and Krivonashenko, the brooding shadow of the KGB is distinct. The true objective of the ski trek, unbeknownst to the other 7 members, was to deliver radioactive samples to a group of agents of the CIA and take pictures of the spies. The latter had been under the guise of ordinary hiking, camping at the Mountain of the Dead. The meeting took place on February 1st, but something went wrong. The Americans realized that the trio were playing a double game. Conflict ensued, a fight, torture, and the brutal massacre of the entire group. And then this says, thrilling as it is, the story did not altogether impress the friends of the people who died, and it's kind of regarded as a red herring. It says they were tough guys. To scare the daylights out of them, you would need something extraordinary, something astonishing.
Well, I'm sorry.
It sounds pretty astonishing to me.
Yeah, I feel like having your eyeballs taken and your tongue ripped out of your mouth while still being alive is pretty, what was the word they used? Remarkable?
Astonishing.
Yeah, astonishing.
Extraordinary. Yeah. Yeah, that's weird. I get real weird vibes from Zolotaryov.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed.
Me too. From the very beginning when you said some 38-year-old man
Yeah. I'm like some 38-year-old dude.
hanging out with the 20s.
And the at the last minute part, like not
Mhm.
supposed to be there.
Yeah, like he was just hanging out in the bar that they were at and they were talking about. And he
Yeah,
was
just
like,
happens to be there.
Just keep thinking about that woman who got the shit beat out of her, pretty much. And just,
She's the one who was standing. She's in the den and she's made like a little ledge and she's like standing on it, kind of. The picture down where it's a woman like on her knees, that's Ludmilla. Her head was laying down on a kind of natural ledge with water rolling over it. Her mouth was open. There are claims that her tongue was ripped, eaten, but the medical records just say that it was missing.
So she was the only one that lost her tongue.
Correct. 2 people lost their eyes, 1
Eyes.
person lost their tongue.
And it's like she's leaning against the side.
Like when you go up in church, when you go up in like Catholic
When you
church and you
kneel.
kneel down and you
When you
that's
kneel like on the altar
that's
thing.
what she looks like to me.
So again, this would make sense if an avalanche was coming. She's leaning up against the wall where you think the snow would go
Over her?
over her and behind her.
She basically has a shield in front of her and she's standing directly up against
right.
it. Mhm.
Like, I mean, she's as close to that as you can get.
Mhm.
Also, though, that's also a position that they might put you in to execute you. But none of them had gunshot wounds, right? And they weren't strangled. They didn't have broken hyoids. They weren't, which that's what makes me think maybe not KGB.
They found a knife sheath, but they never found the knife, which is odd. The branches were cut with a tool that could not be misinterpreted, but the absence of this tool could not be explained without having somebody taken the knife from the crime scene. And that meant that the case could be closed as a calamity or overwhelming force. So what they were saying was because they didn't find a knife,
They just dismissed the whole thing.
they just dismissed the whole thing. When they dug them out, one of the bodies had a notebook in one hand and a pencil in the other, which is creepy because it just kind of makes you think that maybe they were going to write
down what was happening.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I heard this, but I haven't like found it to be true. So like
Grain of salt, people.
grain of salt. There is like a rumor that the last entry in their diary actually said, "And now we are sure that the snowmen exist." So
What is
they're like
that?
snowmen like a Yeti, or like a snowman like, is that like a term for like the KGB? Like, you know, they're
let's talk about the Yeti theory. Because if a Yeti is built, you know, we're thinking the, you know, winterized version of Empire Strikes Back, because that's like what I picture,
That's true.
which it looks very similar to what you're talking about.
Yes, yeah.
But I'm thinking, you know, the winterized version of Sasquatch. So you're thinking, okay, at least say 8 to 10 feet tall, and maybe it could breathe fire.
So there is one last photo that I didn't tell you guys about.
Damn it.
She's a sneaky bitch, this one.
A little sweet babe.
Sweet little babe. It could be nothing. It could be something. I don't know.
Oh.
Isn't that creepy?
Oh my god.
And it might have just been a person. I don't fucking know. But it's a really eerie looking photo.
And he's doing the classic
classic Sasquatch walk.
Fucking.
So the picture that we're looking at it looks like it was a picture taken during the daytime in the forest.
Oh, put it up on Instagram.
It says, according to Discovery Channel, this is a photo of the Yeti, or mink as the Mansi call it. But if you look at picture 16, the one before it, Nikolai, you know, he's in a big coat. I am super into the woo-woo, but I'm also like the world's biggest skeptic.
Someone wrote a book, Clark Wilkins. He wrote a book called A Compelling Unknown Force, The Dyatlov Pass Incident, aka 6 Hours to Live. This promotes the theory that the hikers left the tent due to smoke from the stove. The problem with this theory is that they would not need to go a mile down the hill to escape smoke from the tent. Even if they thought it could be a fire in the tent, they wouldn't need to go so far away from it. They could easily put it down with plenty of snow around, and easily remedied by opening their tent and ventilating. They certainly wouldn't completely abandon their tent with their shoes and coats inside. Another weakness of the theory is that the consistency of reports by witness and investigators that the stove was unassembled and still in its case. So they did put it away.
So I vote no on the stove. I vote no on Secret Service agents.
I believe Dr. Cox was there to keep an eye on things. But that's kind of it, I think. Just to keep an eye, because
Maybe they were getting close to like something
they
they
could have
shouldn't
been close to
near.
an area.
Right.
Because, I mean, he died too. So I feel like he was just there to kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think his intention was to be like a suicide mission. You
No,
know?
Right,
I
because
don't
he
think
didn't
wanted
intend
check.
to die.
This is a YouTube video that I watched. It's literally just called the Dyatlov Pass Case. It says, why would they leave this tent? I would argue that the only thing that could make them leave would have to be an immediate threat outside of the tent. If something was outside, such as an animal or a UFO, there would be no reason to cut the tent open from the inside. There were no signs of an avalanche. However, they could have escaped believing an avalanche was coming towards them. The problem with this theory is that the footprints showed them walking in a calm and orderly manner down the slope, as opposed to running away in a panic. So something caused them to panic inside the tent, but once outside, they calmed down and made a conscious decision to walk down the slope. Their external stove was a completely unique and homemade design, as the leader of the group had built the stove himself. We know they had used the stove on the night of the incident before the incident took place, as partially eaten pieces of fried ham and bacon were found inside the tent. I think that after disassembling the stove and removing the exhaust pipe, the embers inside the stove were accidentally reignited. As an attempt to get control of the flame, they would have cut a few holes at the top of the tent to vent the smoke. When that didn't work and it became increasingly difficult to breathe, the side of the tent was slashed open. They all escaped in a state of panic. The burn marks on their bodies and clothing could have been from the scalding hot metal stove. Several members of the group were found with blood around their mouth, and coughing up blood can be a symptom of smoke inhalation. Some of them were intoxicated, which could have affected their judgment as well as a sensibility to the cold. I don't really believe that. There was only one flask of vodka, and it was mostly full still left in their thing. When I think of being drunk enough to not know that it's cold outside,
Yeah.
I'm like
That's a lot
face
of
down in the
vodka,
snow because I'm
yeah.
already trashed. You
Yeah.
know, like
I think what's interesting is that you can sort of, if you look at all the individual things that happened, it seems like you can find a reasonable answer. But it's when you put all of these scenarios together that it doesn't make sense. What's really sad is the beginning pictures before they leave. They all look so happy and
I know.
excited.
I also know that they had rules that like you couldn't sit down to eat and relax until everyone like did their chores. So like you had to like put up the tent and like get the food out, and someone's making dinner and someone's getting firewood and whatever. So they were very organized.
Going back to the last entry when they stopped for that night was that they didn't have enough firewood.
Had a surprisingly good night. Air is warm and dry, though it's negative 18 to negative 24 Celsius. Walking is especially hard today. We can't see the trail. We have to grope our way through at times, can't do more than 1 mile per hour. Trying out new ways to clear the path. They have one guy in front of them. He drops his backpack, skis for 5 minutes, come back for a 10 to 15 minute break, and then he catches up with the group. That's one way to keep laying ski tracks nonstop. Hard on the second hiker, though, who has to follow the new trail with full gear on his back. I can't even think of setting up storage here. It's nearly 4. Have to start looking for a place to pitch the tent. We go south into the valley. Seems this place has the deepest snow. Wind's not strong. Snow is 1.22 meters deep. We're exhausted, but we're settling in for the night. Firewood is scarce, mostly damp firs. We built a campfire on the logs, too tired to dig a fire pit. Dinner's in the tent, nice and warm. Can't imagine such comfort on the ridge with howling wind outside, hundreds of kilometers away from human settlements. Slobodin has that picture. He has a picture of himself and he has a hood and he's like kind of smiling, like, why are you taking a picture of me? And his jacket is burnt. We know it is not his because Zinnia writes in her diary, burned mittens too, and Yurkin's quilted jacket. That was one of the ones that was burned beforehand.
So they had burnt some stuff probably on the stove already.
Maybe.
So some of the clothes that they were wearing that was burnt may not have been burnt while it was on their bodies.
Correct.
It may have been burned earlier.
It could have been
Okay.
drying or something.
Right. And then an ember catches it. And...
The other one is that for that picture, the picture of the weird orbs. And obviously the theories are UFO, alien invasion, falling missile. This is the one about radioactive clothing. It was 2 sweaters and a pair of pants that were all tested radioactive. So here's the weird thing about radioactivity. You don't just test for clothes to be radioactive. It's not like you die and they find your body and say, you know what we should do? We should just test this, see if it's radioactive. No, you have to have a reason to think that there could be some radioactivity. The 3 pieces of clothing were 2 sweaters and a pair of pants. They were abnormally high. It was a brown sweater on Ludmila Dubinina, the lower part of trousers on Kolevatov, and the waistband of a sweater on Kolevatov. According to the book Mountain of the Dead by Keith McCloskey, one of the groups had written on a piece of paper a day or two before the internet.
This is also a time traveling story. Right before the invention. Bet you weren't ready for that twist.
Someone had written on a piece of paper a day or two before the incident. Now we know that snowmen exist. In Discovery, Russian Yeti the Killer Lives, someone named Lebecki quotes a cryptic message written in a newspaper the students brought with them. Their newspaper was where they talked about like funny things, like numerous humorous events, and that's when they wrote, from now on we know that the snowmen exist. So this could have been I have no idea. I have no idea what that was. So it's just a little creepy.
Again, like all of these theories make sense to a certain portion of the story. But it's when you put the whole story together that it doesn't make sense.
Like the first part would make sense and the second part would make sense, but the two of them together do not make sense. It's really odd.
No, and when you try to put them together, even if you say, okay, well, this happened and then this happened, it still doesn't make sense. Now, you said that there was some thought that perhaps this tribe had somehow murdered them.
It was like the first thing that people said because they were like, okay, there are these people. Like, we don't know. Like, what the fuck? But they've never been known to be violent. There's never been any reports of anything. There's only been reports of, yeah, when I needed some place to stay because I was also hiking up there, they gave me a place to stay and food. So it was basically immediately taken off the table that, like, they're peaceful people. They've never done anything. For
Right.
years and years, they've
Except
lived
help.
here and helped hikers up and down this mountain.
I'm so
You're
like,
shook.
yeah.
See, and the problem too is there's
Because
so
my
much,
brain wants to make it work.
I know.
And there is
There's
no
so
way
much
to make this story
information
work.
out there, and you can't, like I said, not one of them really
It's
makes
not
sense.
black and white, clear.
Because at first I'm like, avalanche. I'm like, okay, fire in the tent, avalanche. But then that doesn't explain the radioactivity, and it doesn't explain the missing eyeballs.
It also, the other weird part is I want to know why they walked in a calm and orderly manner with no
Yeah,
shoes on.
that's what I keep
I'm
thinking
like
about.
really stuck on that. And one of the other theories that wasn't on here was if it was some type of military something or someone was like, hey, you guys fucking move it. It said that they found 9 footprints. There were definitely 9 people, and that's how many people were in the group. But they said it could have been easy for, like, if someone was walking behind them to like
Just step in their footprint.
their-
step in
yeah.
their footprint, or like if they walked on the side, you could easily cover it up because when they, they did an example where like the imprint from your bare feet, because your feet are warm, will cause the immediate snow around your foot to melt. And then as that freezes, it will freeze into a perfect foot shape, right?
Right. Did they have to dig? Here's the other thing that I can't get my brain around though. They had to dig these people out, and yet their footprints leading away from the campsite are still there and completely visible. Why didn't those get covered up with snow?
I don't know. Like, what the fuck?
I
got
think that
nothing.
they were buried in the snow to make it look like it was an avalanche.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know if I think
don't
that.
know.
I think
I
that
mean,
in this right here.
I know,
in
it's like-
this second, 2 seconds later on a different theory.
It's like, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense.
And I don't think that you could hit. I do believe that an avalanche could break your ribs, give you horrible lacerations, especially if there's debris from trees coming down with it. But it's not going to take out your eyeballs.
And it also doesn't explain the cuts of the top of the trees and all those weird light orbs that other people were also seeing.
And why the government is still refusing to.
Mm-hmm.
They're refusing to give any type of they're like, it absolutely was only a natural disaster of some kind.
Well, and also the government, there's no reason for the government to seal or not release portions of what happened in the story if there isn't something for that they would claim as national security or some other kind of governmental secret, or something that implicates them in some kind of way. Why else would you not release that information, at least to the family?
And there's like other weird things, like, again, her tongue has never been found, which, maybe that was an animal.
Right.
I still don't get how that would happen.
Me either. That's what I keep going to.
I can't imagine it all the way, like showing it like all the way
Well,
down the throat.
And if she was dead or like she couldn't feel it or whatever, it says that she was there with her mouth open.
But she was still alive.
If an animal came and like took her tongue, would there not be blood anywhere around her?
Right.
Yeah.
Like if an animal came, first
She'd
of
be
all, why would an
covered in it.
animal come and just take her tongue? Why wouldn't you take, like,
Well, and why is it that some of the people are fully formed? So, I mean, they still find them. So everybody's frozen, right? And you can tell from the pictures when they first dig out some of the first 4 that they find, that they're perfectly, you can tell that they're frozen, and then the autopsy pictures kind of show you them thawed out, but still in their rigor mortis, scrunched up. But when you get to the last 2, and granted, I understand that an additional month had passed.
it
And-
still
and it
wouldn't
had
cause you to
thaw.
decompose to that it's still freezing.
No,
It's still,
yeah,
it's
you're
snow
like,
covered.
these people are like mummified.
Like you would look Well, like the other people, which
Weird.
is yeah,
just frozen.
you
in
just
time,
look like
right.
you're frozen in time. It's fucking weird.
But
I'm
these,
looking at
I
the
mean,
pictures.
those last two are really like
Those made me scream when I was researching it because I wasn't expecting it to come
No.
up, and all I saw was that staring
Oh,
into my
yeah.
soul, and I was like, nope, 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 nope. I hate this.
When you guys see the pictures, you're gonna understand.
Yeah, they have the postmortem pictures on this website.
They're very intense.
They are very intense.
If you
Check
don't
'em
like
out
looking at
your
dead bodies,
own risk.
right?
And that's Dyatlov Fast, my friends.
Yay.
Wow, I gave you no answers.
Yay.
I just gave you a bunch of
Actually, you gave
questions.
us well,
gave
you
you
gave
every-
us
I
a
gave you a
lot
lot
of
of
answers.
answers.
It's just it's up to each individual person at this point because there's no. And this is one of those kind of stories that, like, I don't know, unless somebody came forward and was like, "I was
Yeah.
there, I helped kill these people," or whatever. I don't
How
know that we would ever
lucky
know.
is fucking Yuri Yudin?
Oh my god! Like,
Dude.
like somebody had to interview him after like all these people
Yeah,
died.
and they're
like,
asking him, and he's basically just saying like, "I have no fucking idea what happened." The only thing he said was the camera was weird. He doesn't remember ever seeing that camera.
I wonder if you have like serious survivor guilt,
Oh,
where
how
you're
could you
just
not?
like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even.
I would just, I mean, like,
wonder
how
if Yuri
lucky are
Yudin is
you?
still alive?
He could
It's
be,
weird.
because I mean, it was what 60-ish years ago. He was 23 at the time, so he'd be in his mid 80s.
Did you guys look at the veins of Yuri Dorichenko?
Oh yeah,
Wow.
Don't his veins look super weird?
and his face is all like, that's the other thing. Like, his face is all kind of like squished to the side. I think something hit them with a force that knocked them back. I mean, maybe the first two died of exposure just from being out, but like the tip, like his nose is gone. Oh, his eyes are still open. I don't like that.
So that's Dyatlov Pass. I want to know what other people think happened.
Yeah,
You should
leave
tell
us.
us.
Yeah, send us your theories at our threesacrime@gmail account.
Or comment on Instagram. Sweet. I mean, that's my fucking story, y'all.
Yay.
That was an amazing story, Emily. Thank you for telling us.
Yes.
It took me 4 hours and 14 minutes to tell. Yay. We need like a goodbye. Do we have like a
Bye.
thanks for joining us today? Because here's the Crime Podcast.
Subscribe and leave us a review.
Yes, please.
But only if it's good.
If it's 5 stars, I swear to fucking God, if you guys give me anything less than that, I will lose my shit. I deserve 5 stars, okay?
Thank you for staying with us.
Yes, thank you.
And that's our podcast. Okay, I'm leaving.
That's beautiful. Goodbye.
Okay, bye.
Goodbye. Thank you. Love you.